The flames from my bonfire reached at least 15 feet into the October night sky when I heard the sirens approaching down Maple Ridge Drive in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I took a sip from my beer and smiled, already knowing exactly what was about to happen. My name is Zachary Morrison, and I have been the fire chief of Cedar Falls for 12 years. I also happen to be the one who personally approved the burn permit for this exact bonfire 3 weeks ago. But apparently, nobody told that to Patricia Henderson, the president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, and the most persistent thorn in my side since I moved into this neighborhood 2 years ago. The police cruiser pulled up in front of my house at 4287 Maple Ridge Drive, and I watched as Officer Dave Martinez stepped out. Behind him came another vehicle, this one a white Lexus that I immediately recognized. Patricia emerged from the driver's seat like a queen arriving at her castle, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair not moving an inch despite the autumn breeze. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "There he is," Patricia shouted, pointing at me with one manicured finger. "Officer, I demand you arrest this man immediately for violating city ordinances and endangering the entire neighborhood with his reckless behavior." Dave walked over to me, trying and failing to suppress a grin. We had known each other since high school, and he knew exactly who I was and what I did for a living. "Evening, Chief," Dave said casually. "Got a complaint about an illegal fire." "Is that so?" I replied, taking another sip of my beer. "Well, Officer Martinez, would you like to see my permit?" Patricia's heels clicked against my driveway as she stormed over. She was maybe 5'4", but she carried herself like she was 6 feet tall. "A permit? There is no permit that would allow such a dangerous and irresponsible display. This is a residential neighborhood, not some backwoods camping ground." I pulled out my phone and brought up the digital copy of the burn permit. "Actually, Patricia, I filed for and received approval for this controlled burn 3 weeks ago. Everything is completely legal and up to code." Her face began to turn an interesting shade of red. "That is impossible. I would have been notified of any such permit applications in my neighborhood. As HOA president, I have connections with the city, and they inform me of these things." "No, they really don't," Dave said, finally letting his amusement show. "The city doesn't have any obligation to inform HOA boards about burn permits. That's not how it works." Patricia snatched my phone from my hand before I could react. She stared at the screen, her lips moving as she read the permit details. Then her eyes traveled to the bottom where the approval signature sat in digital ink. "Zachary Morrison, Fire Chief," she read aloud. Her head snapped up to look at me. "You approved your own permit." "That is a clear conflict of interest. This cannot possibly be legal." "Actually, it is completely legal," I said calmly, taking my phone back. "As fire chief, I am the authority who approves all burn permits in Cedar Falls. That includes my own. And before you ask, yes, I followed the exact same application process as everyone else. I filled out the paperwork, submitted it through the proper channels, and it was reviewed by my deputy chief before final approval." Dave was now actively laughing. "Mrs. Henderson, unless you have an actual emergency, I need to get back to patrol. Chief Morrison here has everything in order and there is no violation occurring." "This is outrageous," Patricia practically shrieked. "I will be taking this to the city council, to the mayor. You cannot just go around having massive fires in a residential neighborhood. What about the smoke? What about the noise? What about property values?" I gestured to my backyard, where the bonfire sat in the center of a cleared area at least 30 feet from any structure, surrounded by a ring of stones and with a garden hose readily available. The fire is contained, controlled, and completely safe. The smoke is minimal because I am burning only clean, seasoned wood. As for noise, I am alone in my backyard listening to music at a reasonable volume. And regarding property values, I somehow doubt a single permitted bonfire is going to tank the market. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You may think you are clever, Mr. Morrison, but you have violated several HOA regulations. Section 14, Paragraph 3 of our bylaws clearly states that no open flames larger than standard patio fire pits are permitted on any property within Willowbrook Estates. And as I told you when you mailed me that citation last month, HOA regulations cannot supersede city ordinances, I replied. I have a legal permit from the city. Your bylaws are irrelevant. We will see about that. Patricia turned on her heel and marched back to her Lexus. Before getting in, she shouted back at me. This is not over, Mr. Morrison, not by a long shot. Dave waited until she had driven away before speaking. Man, you really got under her skin. She's going to make your life hell, you know that, right? She already does, I said with a shrug. Last month it was my lawn being a quarter-inch too tall. The month before that, my trash cans were visible from the street for 20 minutes longer than allowed. She has been looking for any excuse to find me or make me miserable since I moved in. Why does she hate you so much? Because when I moved in, I refused to kiss her ring. She expected me to come pay my respects to the HOA president like some kind of feudal lord. Instead, I waved hello once and went about my business. She has had it out for me ever since. Dave clapped me on the shoulder. Good luck with that. You are going to need it. After Dave left, I settled back into my lawn chair and watched the flames dance against the night sky. The bonfire was actually for a good reason beyond just annoying Patricia. Tomorrow was the Neighborhood Fall Festival, something the HOA organized every year. I had volunteered to run the bonfire and Esmore's station for the kids, and I wanted to make sure I knew exactly how the wood I had purchased would burn. Safety first, always. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Rebecca, my girlfriend of 8 months. She was a paramedic who worked odd shifts, and tonight she was pulling a double. Heard you had some excitement. Patricia, the message read. I typed back. How did you already hear about it? Dave's wife, Christine, is a nurse here. He called her laughing about it. You really approved your own permit. Completely legal and by the book. Had Deputy Chief Williams review it first. You are going to have hell to pay with the HOA, though. When don't I? Rebecca sent back a laughing emoji and told me she had to get back to work. I set my phone down and added another log to the fire. The truth was, I knew Patricia was going to escalate this. She always did. But I had learned a long time ago that bullies only have as much power as you give them. And I was not about to let some power-hungry HOA president dictate what I could and could not do on my own property when I was following all applicable laws. The fire burned down to embers around midnight, and I made sure to properly extinguish everything before heading inside. I had an early shift tomorrow at the station, followed by the festival in the afternoon. It was going to be a long day. The next morning arrived cold and crisp, typical for late October in Iowa. I got to the fire station at 6 in the morning for shift change. Station 3 was my home base, a modern facility built 5 years ago on the south side of Cedar Falls. We had a crew of 15 firefighters split across 3 shifts, plus our paramedic unit. Deputy Chief Tom Williams was already in my office when I arrived, holding a stack of papers and wearing an expression that told me this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. Let me guess, I said, hanging up my jacket. Patricia Henderson, Tom confirmed. He was in his late 50s, a veteran firefighter who had been with the department for 30 years. Salt and pepper hair, a thick mustache, and the kind of steady presence that made him perfect for his role. She filed a formal complaint with the city manager this morning. Actually called him at home before 7 to complain about abuse of power and conflicts of interest. I sat down at my desk and took the papers from him. The complaint was exactly what I expected. 4 pages of flowery language essentially claiming that I had abused my position to grant myself special privileges that other residents would not receive. "This is ridiculous," I muttered. "Anyone can apply for the same permit. I did not give myself special treatment." "I know that. You know that. The city manager knows that, but she is making enough noise that he is requesting a formal review of the approval process." Tom sat down across from me. "Nothing is going to come of it. Your permit application was identical to everyone else's. I reviewed it myself before signing off, and everything was in order. But it is going to be a headache for a few weeks while they go through the motions. She is absolutely relentless. What is her problem with you anyway?" I leaned back in my chair. "Honestly, I think it is because I am not intimidated by her. Most people in the neighborhood just do whatever she says to avoid conflict. But I grew up with 3 older sisters who made Patricia look tame, and I spent my career running into burning buildings. Some angry HOA president does not exactly keep me up at night." Tom laughed at that. "Well, for what it is worth, you have the department's full support. The permit was issued correctly, and if she wants to waste the city's time with a frivolous complaint, that is on her." The rest of the morning was routine. We had 2 calls, both minor. The first was a false alarm at an elementary school, triggered by someone burning popcorn in the teacher's lounge. The second was a small grass fire on the outskirts of town that we had contained in under 20 minutes. By the time I got back to the station, it was almost 1 in the afternoon, and I needed to head over to the festival. Willowbrook Estates had transformed overnight. The neighborhood park, a sprawling 5-acre area with playgrounds, walking paths, and a large pavilion, was decorated with hay bales, cornstalks, pumpkins, and orange and black streamers. Tables were set up selling baked goods, crafts, and various other items. There was a small stage where a local band was playing covers of classic rock songs. Kids ran everywhere in costumes, even though Halloween was still a week away. My bonfire station was set up in a designated area near the back of the park, away from the main activities but close enough to be accessible. The fire pit was a permanent structure, built with stone and designed specifically for events like this. I had brought the same wood from last night, along with metal roasting sticks, marshmallows, chocolate bars, and graham crackers. I was still setting up when a woman approached me. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and wearing jeans and a green sweater. She had a friendly smile and was followed by 2 kids, a boy and a girl who looked to be maybe 7 and 9. "You are Chief Morrison, right?" she asked. "Just Zachary is fine, and you are Melissa Turner. I live over on Oak Street. These are my kids, Connor and Emma." She lowered her voice. "I heard about what happened last night with Patricia. That was amazing," I laughed. "Word travels fast around here. You have no idea. Half the neighborhood is talking about it. Most of us are on your side for what it is worth. Patricia runs this HOA like her personal fiefdom, and it has gotten really old." "Well, I appreciate the support." Connor tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Can we make s'mores now?" "Not yet, buddy. Chief Morrison is still setting up. Why don't you 2 go check out the games over by the pavilion? I will come find you in a bit." The kids ran off, and Melissa helped me finish arranging the supplies on the table I had brought. As we worked, she explained that she had lived in Willowbrook Estates for 5 years, and had watched Patricia's reign become increasingly authoritarian. She started out reasonable, Melissa said. The first year or two, the HOA was just about maintaining common areas and organizing events like this. But then she got it into her head that she needed to regulate everything. Paint colors, lawn ornaments when you can put out trash cans. Last year, she tried to ban basketball hoops on driveways because she thought they were unsightly. Did that pass? No, enough people fought back, but she still brings it up at every meeting. Melissa paused. Are you going to the next meeting? It is Tuesday night. I was not planning on it. You should come. She is definitely going to bring up your bonfire and try to pass some new regulation against them. If you are there, you can defend yourself. I considered it. HOA meetings were not exactly my idea of a fun time, but Melissa had a point. If Patricia was going to try to change the rules because of me, I should at least be there to make my case. All right, I said. I will be there. Melissa smiled. Good. We need more people willing to stand up to her. The festival went well. I spent the next 4 hours helping kids make s'mores, keeping the fire at a safe and controlled level, and chatting with various neighbors. Most were friendly and supportive. A few were clearly Team Patricia and gave me cold looks, but they kept their distance. Patricia herself made an appearance around 4 in the afternoon. She was accompanied by 2 other women who I recognized as members of the HOA board. One was Deborah Kim, the treasurer, a stern-looking woman in her 60s. The other was Susan Chambers, the secretary, who seemed perpetually nervous and afraid of her own shadow. Mr. Morrison, Patricia said in a voice that could freeze water, I see you have decided to continue your reckless behavior despite my warnings. This is a permitted fire in a designated fire pit at an official neighborhood event, I replied calmly. There is nothing reckless about it. We will see what the city has to say about your abuse of power. The city already knows. The complaint was reviewed and dismissed this morning. This was not entirely true yet, but I knew Tom was handling it and had no doubt about the outcome. Patricia's expression tightened. Then I will be taking this to a higher authority. Your behavior is unacceptable, and you will not get away with it. She turned and walked away, her entourage following dutifully behind. Susan glanced back at me with what looked like an apologetic expression, but she did not say anything. The rest of the festival passed without incident. By the time the sun set and the crowds dispersed, I was exhausted but satisfied. The s'mores station had been a hit, especially with the kids, and I had made some connections with neighbors who seemed like decent people. As I was packing up my supplies, Melissa came back with her kids. Thank you for doing this, she said. The kids had a blast. My pleasure. It was fun. I mean it about the HOA meeting on Tuesday. We could really use your support. I will be there, I promised. That night, after getting home and showering, I called Rebecca. She had the evening off for once, and we talked for over an hour about everything from my bonfire drama to her crazy shift the night before that had involved a guy who had somehow gotten his hand stuck in a vending machine. So you are really going to the HOA meeting? She asked. Apparently. Melissa made a good case for it. Just be careful. Patricia sounds like the type to hold grudges. Oh, she definitely is, but I am not going to let her push me around. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. You know, one of these days you are going to have to tell me the real reason you get under her skin so much. I told you. I did not bow down to her when I moved in. There has to be more to it than that. She was not wrong, but I was not ready to get into the whole story. When I had first moved to Willowbrook Estates, Patricia had tried to recruit me to the HOA board. She had been all charm and smiles, talking about how having the fire chief as part of the board would be wonderful for the neighborhood. But then She had made it clear that she expected me to use my position to expedite permits and inspections for HOA projects, to look the other way on violations for board members, and generally, to be her personal tool. When I had politely but firmly declined and explained that I was not going to compromise my professional ethics for an HOA, her demeanor had changed completely. Within a week, I had received my first violation notice for having my trash cans visible from the street. It had been downhill from there. "Maybe someday I will tell you the whole story," I said to Rebecca. "But right now, I just want to enjoy a quiet evening." We talked for a while longer before saying goodnight. I spent the rest of the evening watching a movie and trying not to think about what fresh hell Patricia was probably planning. The weekend came and went quietly. I had a shift on Saturday that included responding to a small kitchen fire that we managed to contain to just one room, and a car accident that thankfully resulted in only minor injuries. Sunday was my day off, and I spent most of it doing yard work and catching up on household chores. Monday brought a new development. I arrived at the station to find Tom waiting for me again, this time with a tablet instead of papers. "You made the news," he said, turning the screen to show me. It was the Cedar Falls Register website, and the headline read, "Fire Chief Under Investigation for Approving Own Burn Permit." The article was relatively short and mostly factual, but it painted the situation as potentially problematic. It mentioned Patricia by name and included several quotes from her about abuse of power and the need for accountability in city government. "Great," I muttered. "This is exactly what I need." "The city released a statement this morning," Tom said, scrolling down. "City manager's office confirmed that the permit was issued properly and that there is no investigation. This article is going to get updated with a correction, but the damage is kind of done." He was right. Even with a correction, people would remember the headline more than the details. It was frustrating, but there was not much I could do about it. "Has this affected anything at the department?" I asked. "Not internally. Everyone here knows this is bogus, but we have gotten a few calls from concerned citizens asking if it is true that you are under investigation." I rubbed my temples. Patricia is really going all out on this. She has connections at the paper. Her husband is on the board of directors or something. Probably how she got the story run in the first place. That made sense. Patricia's husband, Gerald Henderson, was a semi-retired business executive who sat on the boards of several local organizations. I had met him once at a neighborhood event and found him to be surprisingly pleasant, which made me wonder how he ended up with someone like Patricia. Then again, maybe he was different behind closed doors. The day continued with the usual mix of administrative work and emergency calls. By the time evening rolled around, I was ready to go home and relax. But first, I had an HOA meeting to attend. Willowbrook Estates HOA meetings were held in the community room of the neighborhood clubhouse, a building that also housed a small gym and pool. I arrived at 6:30, 30 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to start. The parking lot was already half full, which was unusual according to Melissa, who met me at the entrance. "I have never seen this many people show up to a meeting," she said. "Word must have gotten around. About my bonfire, about everything. The complaint, the news article, Patricia's crusade against you. People are interested." We walked inside together. The community room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a long table at the front where the board members sat. Patricia was already there, shuffling papers and speaking in low tones with Deborah and Susan. She looked up when I entered, and her expression could have curdled milk. I took a seat in the third row, and Melissa sat next to me. Over the next 20 minutes, the room filled up. I recognized maybe half the faces from the neighborhood. Some people smiled and nodded at me. Others looked at me with curiosity or suspicion. At 7 on the dot, Patricia called the meeting to order by rapping a gavel on the table. I had not even known HOA meetings used gavels, but of course Patricia would insist on one. "Good evening, everyone," she began. "Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. We have a full agenda, so let us begin with the minutes from last month's meeting." Susan read through the minutes in a nervous, wavering voice. They were approved without discussion. Then came the treasurer's report from Deborah, which was similarly dry and routine. "Now," Patricia said, her voice taking on a sharper edge, "we come to new business. As I am sure many of you are aware, we have had some incidents recently that highlight the need for stricter regulations regarding open flames and fire hazards within our community." Here we go, I thought. Patricia launched into a detailed account of my bonfire, painting it as a dangerous and reckless act that had endangered the entire neighborhood. She conveniently left out the facts that it was permitted, approved, and completely safe. "I am proposing an amendment to our bylaws," she continued. "That would ban all open flames larger than standard store-bought fire pits on any property within Willowbrook Estates, regardless of city permits. The safety of our residents must come first." A man in the front row raised his hand. "But if the city has already approved it, can the HOA really override that? HOA regulations are a contract that all residents agree to when purchasing property here," Patricia said smoothly. "They are enforceable regardless of city ordinances." That was not entirely true, but I knew better than to interrupt. Better to let her dig her own hole. Melissa raised her hand. "Mrs. Henderson, can you explain exactly what danger Chief Morrison's bonfire posed?" "It was permitted by the city. It was in a controlled environment, and he is literally the fire chief. If anyone knows how to safely manage a fire, it is him." Patricia's face flushed. The size of the fire was excessive and unnecessary. It created smoke that affected the entire neighborhood and set a bad example. "I live 2 houses down from Chief Morrison," another woman spoke up. "I did not notice any smoke at all." "Me neither," someone else added. Patricia was losing control of the room, and she knew it. She tried to steer the conversation back to her proposed amendment, but people kept interrupting with questions and objections. Finally, I stood up. The room went quiet. "Mrs. Henderson," I said calmly, "I understand your concerns about fire safety, but I want to be clear about something. The bonfire you are referring to was approved through the proper channels at the city level. It met all safety requirements and regulations. As fire chief, I take fire safety extremely seriously, both professionally and personally. I would never do anything that would endanger my neighbors." "You approved your own permit," Patricia snapped. "That is a clear conflict of interest." "No, it is not. I followed the exact same process as anyone else. My deputy chief reviewed my application before I signed off on it, just like he does with all applications. There was no special treatment, no shortcuts, no abuse of power. What you are really upset about is that I did not ask your permission first, but I do not need your permission to exercise my legal rights." The room erupted in murmurs. Some people were nodding in agreement. Others looked shocked at my bluntness. Patricia stood up, her hands gripping the table. "How dare you speak to me that way? I am the president of this HOA, and you will show me respect." "I will show you the same respect you show me," I replied. "Which, based on the last 2 years, is not much." "That is it. I am calling for an immediate vote on the fire amendment and on whether Mr. Morrison should face fines for his violations." "Point of order," a man in the back called out. I turned to see it was Gerald Henderson, Patricia's husband. He looked embarrassed. You cannot call for a vote on a bylaw amendment without proper notice. It has to be announced in advance and put on the agenda. Patricia glared at her husband. Gerald, this is an emergency situation. No, it is not, he said quietly. And you know the rules as well as I do. The meeting devolved from there. Patricia tried to maintain control, but she had lost the room. Multiple people spoke up in my defense. Others raised concerns about the HOA's overreach in general. Melissa brought up the basketball hoop ban attempt from the previous year, which started a whole new argument. After about 45 minutes of chaos, Patricia adjourned the meeting abruptly and stormed out. Deborah followed her, but Susan stayed behind, looking shell-shocked. People came up to me afterward to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Patricia. Melissa introduced me to several other neighbors who were frustrated with the HOA's direction. Gerald Henderson even approached me and apologized for his wife's behavior. She means well, he said, though he did not sound convinced. She just gets a bit overzealous sometimes. I appreciate you speaking up about the rules, I said. He nodded and left quickly, probably to go deal with Patricia. On my way out, Susan Chambers caught up with me in the parking lot. Chief Morrison, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. She glanced around nervously, as if Patricia might jump out from behind a car. I just wanted to say that I think what Patricia is doing is wrong. I have been on the board for 3 years, and I have watched her become more and more controlling. I have tried to push back, but she just steamrolls over me every time. Why stay on the board then? Because if I leave, she will just replace me with someone who will do whatever she says. At least this way I can occasionally slow her down. Susan paused. She is not going to let this go, you know. She is going to find some way to retaliate. Let her try. Susan looked at me with a mixture of admiration and pity. You are braver than I am. Good luck. The next few days were surprisingly quiet. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Patricia was furious about how the meeting had gone and was looking for ways to strike back, but nothing materialized immediately. Then, on Thursday afternoon, I got a call from the city attorney's office. A lawyer named Jennifer Rodriguez wanted to meet with me to discuss the HOA situation. We scheduled a meeting for the following Monday. When I arrived at her office in downtown Cedar Falls, Jennifer turned out to be a sharp woman in her early 40s with dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She got straight to the point. Chief Morrison, I am going to be honest with you. Patricia Henderson is causing problems, but not in the way you might think. She has been filing complaints with every city department she can think of, demanding investigations into you, your permit, your conduct as fire chief, everything. And they are all baseless, which is why we are having this conversation. The city manager asked me to reach out to you to see if you would be interested in pursuing legal action against Mrs. Henderson for harassment. I was surprised. Is that something we can do, potentially? She has filed at least 8 formal complaints in the past 2 weeks, all of which have been dismissed. She has contacted the newspaper, the city council members, and even tried to get the state fire marshal involved. She is wasting city resources and, frankly, harassing you. We could pursue a cease and desist order at minimum. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hit back at Patricia legally to make her understand that actions have consequences. But another part of me worried that escalating things would just make the situation worse. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. But I want you to know that the city has your back on this. What she is doing is not okay. I left the meeting feeling conflicted. That evening, I talked it over with Rebecca, who was firmly in favor of legal action. She is trying to ruin your reputation and your career, Rebecca said. You cannot just let that slide. I know, but I also do not want to turn this into a huge legal battle. I just want to live my life in peace. And you will not be able to do that as long as she is coming after you." She had a point, but I still was not sure what the right move was. The decision was made for me the following week. I arrived home from work on Wednesday to find a certified letter waiting for me. It was from the Willowbrook Estates HOA, signed by Patricia Henderson. The letter informed me that I was being fined $500 for illegal fire activity on October 12th, and that failure to pay within 30 days would result in a lien being placed on my property. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my anger build with each pass. She was actually trying to fine me for a permitted legal bonfire. This was beyond petty. This was delusional. I immediately scanned the letter and emailed it to Jennifer Rodriguez. She called me back within an hour. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. She is now attempting to enforce an unenforceable fine for an activity that was completely legal. This crosses the line into actionable harassment. Are you ready to fight back? "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I am done playing nice." Jennifer explained that she would draft a cease and desist letter first, demanding that Patricia retract the fine and stop filing frivolous complaints. If she did not comply, we would pursue further legal action. The cease and desist was sent on Friday. According to Jennifer, Patricia had to respond within 10 business days. She responded in 3. The letter from Patricia's attorney was aggressive and defiant. It claimed that the HOA had every right to enforce its bylaws and that my burn permit did not exempt me from HOA regulations. It also threatened to counter-sue me for defamation if I continued to slander Patricia's good name. Jennifer laughed when she read it to me over the phone. "This is the worst legal strategy I have ever seen." She is basically admitting that the HOA is trying to override city law, which they cannot do. And the defamation threat is ridiculous because truth is an absolute defense. So what happens now? Now we file a lawsuit. I am going to recommend that we go after Patricia personally as well as the HOA. Her actions have exceeded her authority as HOA president, and she should be held individually accountable. The lawsuit was filed the following week. It alleged harassment, abuse of process, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We were seeking actual damages for my legal fees and time spent dealing with Patricia's complaints, plus punitive damages. The news spread through Willowbrook Estates like wildfire. Melissa called me the day after the lawsuit became public record. "You are my hero," she said. "Do you know how many people in this neighborhood have wanted to do exactly what you are doing? I am just defending myself." "You are doing more than that. You are standing up to a bully. That matters." The lawsuit put a temporary hold on Patricia's antics. She could not contact me directly due to the cease and desist, and her attorney had apparently advised her to stop filing complaints with the city. But I knew this was far from over. The HOA held an emergency meeting 2 weeks later. I was not invited, but Melissa attended and filled me in afterward. Apparently, there had been a motion to recall Patricia as president due to her exposing the HOA to legal liability. The motion failed, but only barely. Several board members and residents had spoken out against her, and even Deborah, her loyal treasurer, had expressed concerns about the lawsuit. Susan Chambers, surprisingly, had voted in favor of the recall. Melissa said Susan had given a short but powerful speech about how Patricia's personal vendetta against me had gone too far and was hurting the entire community. The lawsuit moved slowly, as lawsuits tend to do. We were in the discovery phase, exchanging documents and information. Patricia's attorney had tried to get the case dismissed multiple times, but the judge denied each motion. Meanwhile, life went on. I continued my work as fire chief, responding to emergencies and managing the department. Rebecca and I celebrated our one-year anniversary with a weekend trip to Chicago. The neighborhood settled into a cautious peace, with people mostly avoiding the topic of the lawsuit in public. Then, in late January, Jennifer called me with interesting news. Patricia's attorney reached out about a settlement, she said. Really? What are they offering? Full retraction of all fines and complaints, a formal apology, and $20,000. I whistled. That is more than I expected. I think they realize they are going to lose at trial and they are trying to minimize the damage. But here is the thing. I think we can get more. The discovery process has revealed some very interesting information. Like what? Like the fact that Patricia has been using HOA funds for personal expenses, charging her lunches to the HOA credit card, using HOA money to pay for her own landscaping, and calling it common area maintenance, things like that. It is not a huge amount of money, maybe $10,000 or $15,000 total, but it is embezzlement. I sat down heavily. Are you serious? Completely. And I have a legal obligation to report it now that I have discovered it. I wanted to give you a heads up before I do. Do it, I said. If she has been stealing from the HOA, the homeowners deserve to know. Jennifer filed a report with the Cedar Falls Police Department the next day. A detective named Sarah Chen was assigned to the case. I met with her and Jennifer to go over the financial records that had been uncovered during discovery. Detective Chen was thorough and professional. She explained that financial crimes like this could take time to investigate, but the evidence seemed pretty clear. She would need to interview Patricia, review bank records, and talk to other HOA board members. The investigation took about 6 weeks. During that time, the neighborhood was abuzz with rumors and speculation. Some people were shocked. Others said they had always suspected Patricia was up to something. Susan Chambers apparently went to the police voluntarily and provided additional documentation showing suspicious transactions. In March, Patricia Henderson was arrested and charged with embezzlement and theft by deception. The total amount she had stolen was just over $18,000, spread out over 3 years. She had been careful to keep individual transactions small to avoid suspicion, but collectively, it added up. The arrest made the local news. I watched the footage of Patricia being led out of her house in handcuffs, and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. She had tried to destroy me over a legal bonfire, and it turned out she was a criminal. But another part of me just felt sad. This whole situation could have been avoided if she had just left me alone. Gerald Henderson filed for divorce 2 weeks after her arrest. According to neighborhood gossip, he claimed he had no idea about the embezzlement and was humiliated by the whole situation. The HOA held another emergency meeting, and this time successfully voted to remove Patricia as president. Susan Chambers was appointed interim president until proper elections could be held. One of her first acts was to drop the fine against me and issue a formal apology on behalf of the HOA. My lawsuit was settled shortly after. With Patricia facing criminal charges, her attorney was eager to make the civil case go away. We settled for $50,000, most of which came from the HOA's insurance policy. Patricia was personally responsible for $10,000 of it, plus all of her own legal fees. The criminal case moved through the system over the next several months. Patricia's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was not interested in going easy on her. The case went to trial in July. I attended the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom and watching as the evidence was presented. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that the transactions were legitimate HOA expenses and that any errors were honest mistakes, but the prosecution methodically destroyed that defense. Bank records, receipts, testimony from other board members, it all painted a clear picture of deliberate theft. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Patricia showed no emotion as the verdict was read, but I saw her hands shaking. Sentencing was scheduled for August. The prosecutor recommended a sentence of 3 years in prison and full restitution to the HOA. Patricia's attorney argued for probation and community service, citing her lack of prior criminal history. The judge was not swayed. Patricia Henderson was sentenced to 2 years in prison, 5 years of probation, and ordered to pay full restitution plus additional fines. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board in the state of Iowa. As I left the courthouse that day, I ran into Susan Chambers in the hallway. She looked relieved. "It is finally over," she said. "How is the HOA doing?" "Better. We have a new board, new bylaws that limit the president's power, and better oversight of the finances. It is like a weight has been lifted off the whole neighborhood." "I am glad to hear it." Susan smiled. "You know, when you first moved in and Patricia started going after you, I thought you were going to cave like everyone else. But you stood your ground, and it made a difference. Thank you for that." I went home that evening feeling like I could finally close this chapter of my life. The bonfire that had started this whole mess seemed like it had happened years ago, not just 10 months. Rebecca came over that night, and we sat on my back deck watching the sun set. She had been with me through all of it, listening to my frustrations and supporting my decisions. "Are you going to have another bonfire?" she asked with a smile. "Maybe," I said. "I still have that permit after all. It is good for a full year. You should do it. Invite the neighbors, make it a celebration." "That is not a bad idea." 2 weeks later, I did exactly that. I sent out invitations to everyone in Willowbrook Estates for a neighborhood bonfire and cookout. I made it clear that the fire would be permitted, controlled, and completely safe, and that everyone was welcome. About 40 people showed up, including Melissa and her kids, Gerald Henderson looking happier than I had ever seen him, and even Susan Chambers. We roasted hot dogs and marshmallows, told stories, and enjoyed a beautiful summer evening. As I stood by the fire, watching my neighbors laugh and relax, I thought about everything that had happened. Patricia had tried to use her petty power to punish me for not submitting to her authority. Instead, she had exposed her own crimes and lost everything. There was probably a lesson in there somewhere about karma or hubris or the dangers of unchecked power. But mostly, I was just glad it was over. The fire burned bright and warm into the night, exactly as I had planned it from the beginning. And this time, nobody called the cops. In the months that followed, life in Willowbrook Estates settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new HOA board, led by an elected president named Marcus Chen, who was a retired teacher and nothing like Patricia, focused on actual community building rather than petty enforcement. They revised the bylaws to add checks and balances, created a transparent budgeting process, and generally made the HOA something that added value to the neighborhood instead of being a source of stress. I continued my work as fire chief, handling the usual mix of emergencies, inspections, and administrative duties. The investigation into my permit approval had been formally closed with a finding of no wrongdoing, and my professional reputation remained intact. Rebecca and I moved in together that fall. She sold her condo and moved into my house on Maple Ridge Drive. We talked about getting married eventually, but we were in no rush. We were happy just being together. Melissa Turner became one of our closest friends in the neighborhood. Her kids, Connor and Emma, loved coming over to hear stories about firefighting and emergency calls. I taught them about fire safety and let them try on my old helmet. Susan Chambers surprised everyone by running for and winning the position of HOA treasurer in the proper elections held that October. She told me that standing up to Patricia during the recall vote had given her confidence she never knew she had. She was dating someone now, a widower from the next neighborhood over, and she seemed genuinely happy. Gerald Henderson moved out of Willowbrook Estates entirely. He bought a smaller house on the other side of Cedar Falls and started over. I saw him occasionally at the grocery store or around town, and we would exchange polite greetings. He seemed lighter, like a burden had been lifted. As for Patricia, she served her time at the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women in Mitchellville. I never visited, never wrote, never thought about her much at all. She had been a problem that I dealt with, and now she was gone from my life. I heard through the grapevine that she was released early for good behavior after about 15 months and moved to another state to live with family. I hoped she learned something from the experience, but honestly, I did not care one way or the other. The bonfire that had started everything became a neighborhood tradition. Every fall, I got a permit and hosted a community bonfire and cookout. It became one of the most popular events in Willowbrook Estates, bringing together neighbors who might not otherwise interact. Kids loved it. Adults loved it. Even the new HOA board loved it because it fostered community spirit. Standing by the fire at the third annual event, watching Rebecca help Melissa's kids make s'mores, while Marcus Chen told dad jokes to a group of groaning neighbors, I reflected on how strange life could be. A simple bonfire had turned into a legal battle, a criminal investigation, and ultimately positive change for an entire community. I had learned some things through the whole experience. I learned that standing up to bullies was important, even when it would be easier to just go along. I learned that abuse of power, even on a small scale like an HOA, could have real consequences for real people. And I learned that communities were stronger when people looked out for each other instead of trying to control each other. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the October sky. I added another log and adjusted the arrangement to keep the flames controlled and even. After all, I was the fire chief. I knew what I was doing, and this time, everyone knew it too.